Secretary of State Mike Pompeo sits down for an exclusive interview with One American News following last week's NATO summit and the recent release of an American citizen in Iran. One America's Emerald Robinson has more.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary, for sitting down with me this morning. Now, we were just on a long trip together.
Emerald, I'm glad you joined us, Emerald. It was great. It was an important trip.
Yeah, and I do want to start out talking about that. Clearly, this administration has shifted the priorities of NATO, of the alliance, and there's some tension between the president and leaders. Would you chalk this up to growing pains, resentment? How do you describe what we saw last week at NATO?
So I've actually seen an enormous shift for the 3 years of this administration. President Trump came in rightly recognizing both the importance of NATO and the fact that it needed to be ready for the challenges that are presented today in 2019 and tomorrow in 2020. So there were a handful of things. One, we made to make sure that the correct adversaries were identified, that we were fighting the right fight. That's a 70-year-on organization that we celebrated last week, and we need to always make sure that it's fit for purpose for our times. And second, the president rightly recognized that there needed to be burden sharing in a way that there was not, and he demanded that other countries step forward, not just for America and for the American taxpayers. That's certainly important, but it's important for those countries too to step up and commit to defending themselves. We've made real progress. $130 billion so far, another roughly $400 billion between now and a couple of years from now. These are significant changes, right? That's over $500 billion in increased defense spending inside of NATO, not coming from the American taxpayers. And I think we've made a good shift, an important transformation. There's more work to do, but I think the leaders came out of NATO stronger, more connected, and prepared to take on the challenges that NATO will have to confront as we move forward.
And the president continued to call out specific leaders for not meeting that 2% commitment, specifically Justin Trudeau, who then, you talked about the connectedness of the leaders, but then we saw that video that sort of became the narrative out of NATO. I don't believe we've had your reaction to the so-called gossiping video of Trudeau, Macron, Boris Johnson. How did you feel about that video? Yeah,
look, I pay attention to the things that happen. We made important progress. We do want Canada to spend 2%. They promised that they would do it. So this isn't an American commitment on Canada's behalf. This is Canada's leaders on behalf of its own people. Germany, too, is falling short of its 2% commitment. We had an important lunch where we gathered those that had made it so far. There's still a couple dozen countries that need to get to the right place and not only spend the 2%, but make sure that it's allocated in the right way. Real progress has been made during President Trump's 3 years. More to do.
Speaking of more to do, you went on to 2 more countries following London in a whirlwind trip. You went to Portugal, Morocco. In Portugal, you met with Israeli Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu. Now, just before he met with you, Netanyahu has said that he is losing hope that Europe will support the U.S. sanctions in regards to Iran. After meeting with leaders and your counterparts in London at NATO, do you feel the same way Netanyahu feels, or do you still feel there's hope?
So I had a good and important discussion with the Prime Minister of Israel. They're great friends, great allies, an important democracy in a tough neighborhood. This administration has fundamentally changed the way we're addressing the nuclear threat from Iran and the terrorism threat from Iran. We've worked in my time and the President's time to get the Europeans to come to understand that you can't underwrite this bad behavior. You can't give them money. You can't trade with them. Those things that give them the resources to create missile systems, nuclear-capable weapons systems. That's inappropriate. We're hoping Europe will change its direction. We've begun to see it. The E3 called out the Iranians for their missile program just last week. That's progress. We all collectively, the world must do more to stop the world's largest state sponsor of terror.
And speaking of not giving the money, you just negotiated a hostage transfer without giving them money, without relieving sanctions. How did you accomplish that with the current maximum pressure campaign you have on Iran?
In the end of the day, the Iranians made the decision that releasing this American was the right thing to do months ago. It's the right thing to do just this last week when they did it. It was a great day. It was a great day for America. It was a great day for his family. We know there's more to do. We know that Iran still continues to hold Americans, and I want every American to know that the United States Department of State under President Trump's leadership is working this morning, this afternoon, tomorrow to get every American home.
Want to see more videos like this? Click on the link below and subscribe to One American News on YouTube, and call your cable provider and kindly demand that One American News is added to your lineup. Call and subscribe today.